So welcome to our new run of knowledge series sessions. This series, first one of the year, will focus on engaging communities. So whether that's bringing communities together, like today's session, engaging underrepresented groups, or getting people involved in topics such as health or climate action. Today's session is all about connections, about bringing people together in communities, and I'm delighted with the panel that we have today. So the way that the session will go, first of all, I'll hand over to my colleague Ellen Perry. So she works at the National Lottery Community Fund with me. Then we'll hear from Adam Carter, Senior Programme Manager for the Soil Association. Then we'll hear from Harry Hobson, Director of Neighbourly Lab. Then Mark Ereira-Guyer, Founder and Director of Civil Society Consulting. And then joining us at the last minute is Christine Owen, Associate Director at the Innovation Unit. So thanks for stepping in at short notice, and we're delighted to have all of you with us today. We really do appreciate you giving up your time. Before I hand over to my colleague Ellen, can I also introduce Elvid Selman? He'll be working behind the scenes to make things go smoothly as possible tech-wise. So he'll be sharing things in the chat, he'll be sharing bios, links to resources, and also keeping an eye on that chat and feeding into the conversation where possible. That's not always possible, but he'll be doing what he can to feed in your questions into the conversation. Also, Elvid is a Welsh speaker, so if anybody wants to test him by sharing something in the chat in Welsh, then by all means, please do so. Anyway, that's enough from me for the time being. So first of all, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Ellen Perry, who's going to set the scene for today's session. So I'm going to mute myself and it's over to you, Ellen. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Nick. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, as Nick mentioned, my name's Ellen and I'm part of the Knowledge and Learning team here at the National Lottery Community Fund. So I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to speak today at this session, which, as Nick said, is looking at different approaches to bringing people together in their communities. Much of what we fund has at its heart the idea of connecting people. So perhaps in a place, through an event, or as a result of other community-based work. Just to get us started today, I'm going to share a few examples, highlighting some themes that we see across the work and factors which can contribute to success. Hopefully these will introduce some key ideas and perhaps spark some questions to consider as we move through the rest of the session. So I wanted to start by mentioning the Soil Association's Food for Life Get-Togethers programme. We published an impact feature on this towards the end of last year, and this acted as a bit of a jumping off point for today's topic. Food for Life Get-Togethers supported communities to prepare, cook and enjoy food together through things like community gardens, festivals, cookery classes, and lots more. And obviously Adam's here from the Soil Association today, so we'll hear more in detail about what that looked like shortly. But something that came through really strongly both in that work when I was researching it and elsewhere is the idea of connecting over a common experience or interest. So one example that stood out for me personally was the work of small charity The Furnival in Sheffield. So they introduced food to their drop-in and language sessions for newly arrived women from Somalia, Yemen, Sudan and Libya. The group prepared and ate a meal together at the end of every session. So food provided a framework and a reference point for sharing stories, experiences and skills and for building relationships. And having that focus supported integration and broke down barriers. Food is a great broad example of something to connect over, and it's probably one of the most universal. But the anchor for bringing people together might also be something much more specific. So woodworking, for example, like at the Wee County Men's Shed in Clackmannanshire. Or in Merseyside, Rise Mind and Body worked with a local running club to provide inclusive and wide-ranging provision, including free running coaching, mindfulness and yoga classes. And its walk and talk group explored local beauty spots and giving people a space to connect and chat through any problems. We see regularly that placing the focus on an activity or on sharing the challenges and journey of a particular life experience is often a key hook to bring people together. Epic Dad Wales, for example, run dads and children's clubs and family events bringing families together for encouragement and support alongside courses in money management and cooking on a budget. And they also create safe spaces for fathers to talk about mental health and find help if needed. The second area I was keen to highlight was the importance of practicalities. So learning from our grant holders illustrates the need to pay attention to these and the way that they can make all the difference in whether people are able to join groups and events. So this might include things relating to public transport, accessibility, costs, timings, amongst lots of other things. In South Wales, for example, Vision for Our Valley makes sure the play schemes and upcycling workshops it runs are always on bus or train routes. Making attendance easier can also mean helping people to take things a step at a time. So it can be intimidating for anyone to be with a group of brand new people or to try something you've never done before. And we've seen how projects have set up induction processes to help with this. Health for All Connections in Leeds, for example, saw that people were signing up for their activities, but then not turning up on the day. So they set up a process where a staff member met new attendees beforehand. And making these kinds of individual connections makes a difference. It can be much easier to join a group if you feel like you know someone already. I also wanted to touch briefly on the way that specific events and gatherings can be a catalyst for bringing people together and for building stronger, better connected communities. So another of our impact features looks at the Big Lunch initiative, which is led by Eden Project Communities. And this runs during a specific week in the summer each year, and it encourages neighbours to gather together in whatever way works for them. These flexible but kind of defined frameworks of projects like the Big Lunch and Food for Life get-togethers give people a reason to take that first step, and that so often leads to much more. So evaluation from the Big Lunch shows over 1 million community celebrations have led to 18 million new friendships. And 76% of people surveyed said they felt a stronger sense of community as a result of these events. And finally, I just wanted to say a few words on recognising the crucial role of community organisers in the work of bringing people together. So they're really, really important. And learning from our grant holders, again, kind of reinforces the importance of acknowledging that work, drawing on that expertise and of building skills and confidence doing that work too. Yes, so that's it from me. Thank you so much for listening. Yeah, really brilliant to kind of prepare for this and to share some examples from our grant holders around the UK who are doing work to bring people together. If you'd like to find out a bit more about some of these and the ideas we're discussing, please do feel free to follow the links in the chat. I think I've been sharing or has shared. Yes, there's some published pieces on our website that draw on those. Yeah, I'll now pass back to Nick to move on to our guest speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you for that lovely framing as well. So now we're going to hear from our guest speakers, and then after we've heard from our guest speakers, we'll have a bit of a chat, a bit of a conversation around bringing communities together and that sort of work. First of all, we're going to hear from Adam Carter, Senior Programme Manager for the Soil Association, to build on Ellen's introduction. Adam.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Ellen, and thanks, everyone. I've got a few slides which I'm hopefully going to share now. It's doing that warming up thing. It's slightly nerve-wracking.
We can see them, Adam. They've come through.
You can see that. Perfect. So yeah, I won't go on too much because it was a nice introduction from Ellen about the work that we've been doing, the lottery funded work that we've been doing, but just briefly, sort of Food for Life get-togethers. Although it was led by the Soil Association, it was very much a partnership programme delivered with 5 national partners, including Eden Project, who were just mentioned, and 12 local partners, community groups on the ground with real direct grassroots knowledge of the communities that they're working with. What we tried to do was connect communities through food, and by good food we really mean food that's good for people, that's good for the planet, that's good for budgets, food that improves health. And we really just wanted to get people to come together through cooking, growing, eating, sharing food. communally. We wanted to build the capacity of community organisers to have more confidence, more skills, more knowledge in being able to run good food activities that bring communities together. And yeah, throughout the sort of 4 years of the programme, we just encountered so many hugely inspirational food leaders or community leaders that were doing great work. But often that work wasn't hugely valued outside of the community groups that they were working with. And yeah, so we invested quite a lot in the leadership potential of those community organisers to go on and make the changes that they really wanted to see. So bringing in things like food leadership, advocacy, different approaches to community development, and really kind of hot housing these community leaders to go on and make further changes. Briefly, we were quite successful in terms of numbers. There are over 5,500 people that registered get-together events. We were running between 2019 and 2023, so there were considerable bumps in the road in terms of getting people together during that time. But we did manage to get cross UK coverage. We were in 93% of all of the local authority areas in the UK. So I think that there is a real need for people to come together through food that we were able to capitalise on. We provided loads of resources for community groups to use. They were quite successful. Over 50,000 copies of our resource pack were downloaded during our last campaign. Networking was really important, bringing those community leaders, organisers together, and we had nearly 2,000 people join our network sessions, and we trained 114 food leaders through our My Food Community programme. Very quickly, that map was on the previous slide, but diversity and inclusion was built into the programme. That was a sort of stated ambition from the start of it, that we wanted to help those in the most need. It was something that we kept track on during the programme, and you see there from the graph the highest number of our people that engaged with the programme were from the 10 to 30% most deprived neighbourhoods in the UK. We were lucky enough in the 4-year funded programme, in the first 2 years, we were able to employ some regional engagement workers who really spent time building up trust, listening to local groups, finding out what it was that they really needed and how we could be best placed to help. So that was hugely important. We worked with those partners, frontline organisations, and they were, again, hugely helpful to making sure that our messaging was right and would resonate with the audiences that we were working with. And yeah, practical advice, networking opportunities were really helpful. I should have added in here as well, small grants. We issued around 900 small grants, only about 150 quid, just to get over that first step and initiate some action and get people out there running events and activities. And that was a great way of engaging people and getting them involved in the programme. Very quickly, I've just got a little graph chart, I'm not entirely sure what it is, but these are a representation of the beneficiaries of those taking part. And I think this really speaks to the point that Ellen made in the framing session, that food really is universal and it's just a great way of connecting people. You'll see from the graph that we've got a huge range of diversity in terms of our target audiences, from children, young people, to older people, families, unemployed people, people on low incomes, people living with chronic illness and disabilities. I mean, you can read them all for yourself, but it's pretty much the point I'm trying to make, I think, with this slide, is that universal power of food as a connector, as a way of providing memories and things that we all share. Obviously, it's fundamental to life, so it does cut across any cultural, social differences that we may have. And lastly, really, from me, the programme was evaluated all the way through by 2 academic partners, University of West of England and Coventry University. But I thought this slide, and they'll probably kill me for just putting in one random slide, picked out of a hugely extensive research that they provided. but this was some research that they did with us around participation in what they called social food citizenship. It's really sort of social food activity. Just looking at what are the motivations, what are the barriers, and what are the enablers that people experience that make them get involved or prevent them from getting involved. So yeah, just thought it'd be useful for this discussion around engagement, just to have a little look at that. And if we focus on the positives and we look at the enablers, really that having access to resources, that's why I think like our small grants scheme worked really well. People wanted to do some stuff, but there were some barriers in the way. So how do we remove those barriers? Providing other resources as well, in form of training, activity packs, and so on, were all really well received. Mentioned before about our engagement officers spending time with communities. That co-design piece has been absolutely essential, as was recognising and celebrating community organisers and doing all that we could to increase their capacity and confidence for running these kind of activities. And then lastly, that institutional support. Where could we be as a fairly large UK-wide charity? And it was really about, I think our best role was that one of convening, facilitating, putting people in touch with one another, making, advocating for changes to policy, that kind of thing. So yeah, I just felt that was quite a useful slide, really, just to sort of think about what those barriers are to engagement and how they can be mitigated. So I know I only had 5 minutes, so I've really tried to rattle through it, but we've got a whole load of research available on our website. So the link's there. If you can't access that, I can just stick it in the chat. And I'm always very happy to have a chat if anyone wants to get in touch with me directly. Okay, so that's it from me. We're not doing any questions or anything yet, are we? I think I'm handing over. Thank you very much. Getting a clap from Mark, which gratifies me enormously. So yeah, are we just?
Yeah, back to me, Adam. Thanks very much. We'll hopefully have an opportunity to pick up some of those barriers and enablers later. So thank you very much. Next, we're going to hear from Harry Hobson, Director of Neighbourly Lab. So over to you, Harry. I believe you've got some slides as well.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Nick. And nice to see you all. And thanks for inviting us on the call. And my colleague Shoma is here as well. I've got a couple of slides I'll share if that's okay. But let me do that. Without further ado.
I'll let you know when they come through, Harry.
Oh yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Something's happening.
Oh, that's promising. Well,
there we go. Neighbourly Lab and our work with local shops.
Oh, that's good. And is everything? There's no.
It's perfect. It's like a presentation. It's good to go, Harry. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks, everyone. Sorry. Yeah, lovely. Okay. So Neighbourly Lab and I work with local shops. So the first, very briefly, Neighbourly Lab. We are here in order to think how to innovate to increase social connectedness massively. And that means experimentation, research, and evidence sharing. We're very grateful for the funding we obviously received from you, but we also do lots of work and have our sleeves very rolled up on lots of work we do for charities and local government and councils and other funders. So that's Neighbourly Lab. I thought that it'd be interesting to share about 5 things about this project. I'll just very quickly explain kind of why shops, because that might be, people might be wondering kind of, why shops? I'll explain that. I'm going to just say one thing about our process, which is kind of this idea of superpowers that we can leverage. And then I'll give you a bit of a clue as to what the big idea is. And I'll share 3 insights about that big idea and the mechanism we're going to go with. I should say we're only a quarter of the way through this program. And so we haven't got any findings or stats or anything to share yet, but obviously we'll be back when we do. don't worry, I'm not going to go through all this stuff on the slide, but basically the aim of this programme is to think, okay, how can we unlock the social superpowers of shops? And we got to this because we did a programme before called the Essential Mix, an amazing programme, also funded by the Bringing People Together Fund, also supported by Dav Palak, so thank you, Dav. And that took us into Tesco's in Scotland, and we became fascinated by the role that supermarkets and big shops can play in local communities. And at the same time, we were doing lots of work with cash-strapped councils about social infrastructure, and they kept going, well, we're doing what we can, but what about the private sector? What about all the social infrastructure that could be switched on in the private sector, like supermarkets and other things like that? So that's kind of what led us here. And so what we're looking to do is to innovate and find new ways that shops can play a wider role in their local communities, new formats, new ways of doing it. Why shops? Because there's two things which are magical about shops, we think. First of all, they are right in the flow of everyday life. They're at the front and centre of your daily and weekly routines. We're all there. And there's just a sense of like, it's happening anyway. The shops, we're there, whatever. We're not going out of our way to go shopping. It's in the flow of everyday life. And then secondly, really importantly, and a bit more kind of psychologically, people feel very familiar in shops. When you're shopping, you're kind of on the front foot, as someone put it to us. You feel okay. You're not on someone else's space. And you've kind of got power. You're there on your own terms. And the kind of places which might be intimidating to certain people, like council offices or churches or GP surgeries, shops tend not to be like that. Shops tend to be welcoming, familiar, easy spaces for people to be in. So that piqued our interest. We were like, what can we do in these spaces? And I just wanted to say that one of the unusual things about this programme, I think, especially given that it's funded by the National Lottery Community Fund, is that we're working very closely with private sector businesses. And that involves a real sweet spot of these three things. And first and foremost, obviously, is to achieve the social aim of the projects and adapt it to the local context. So that is obviously paramount. But we have to also think of things and innovations and ways of doing things which advance the retailer's commercial goals and which are operationally easy or even effortless for the retailer to do. And there we go. I've sort of scribbled in the sweet spot of those three things. And the reason for doing that, it's not because we want to help supermarkets do even better or small local shops to thrive, although we probably do. But the real reason we're doing it is because by doing it, we get longevity at the unit level in each shop. So we get and most of all that comes from the buy-in of the staff and the managers. And then the other reason it really matters is spread or diffusion, because we want to come up with models that don't just work for a couple of shops. We want to come up with models which will spread to every big supermarket up and down the UK. So that means they have to be alluring, they have to be attractive, they have to be gettable, and they have to be very easy to copy, very easy to emulate. So that's so it's a difficult challenge we've set ourselves. We have to achieve all three of these things at once. And of course, we're very sensitive to the fact that we're using lottery players' money, and we've been very careful not to give any kind of commercial advantage to any given shops. But we do have to think how this works commercially for shops. And I think that makes it a bit more challenging, but also really exciting. The next slide I want to show is the way we do our innovation is we think about, okay, what are the superpowers we can leverage and what are the goals we can answer to? So I'll just talk about the big busy supermarkets. So the superpowers they've got, which we can leverage, we can make something of, is the fact that they've got underused space. This all started when we saw an area of a Tesco in Scotland which was just full of bags of compost, which it could have been a meeting space, but they were just using it for kind of storage. So lots of these big supermarkets have got space that's not very well used. That's the first thing. The second thing, of course, as we've talked about, is a wide mix of everyone being local. And the third superpower they've got is this weekly rhythm and dwell time. People spend time in a routinized way in these big supermarkets. And the goals we can help them with is, first of all, staff recruitment and retaining. That's a big problem for big supermarkets. They're really always thinking about staff well-being and recruitment and retention. The second thing is they want to be an attractive destination for people to come to, especially against online shopping. And thirdly, they want to look good. They want to do comms and corporate comms and CSR, and we can help them with that. And then with small convenience stores, it's a slightly different set of needs. It's, well, their superpowers is basically the rhythm of a small number of very regular customers, often vulnerable customers, and a real personal face-to-face relationship that the shopkeeper tends to have with regular customers. So the question is, what can we do with that superpower? And particularly with small shops, they are under real financial pressure all the time. 22% of small shops' revenues come from vapes and tobacco, and a lot of that's about to be banned. So there's real extra financial pressure coming up for small convenience stores. And we want to help them think how they can maintain loyalty and diversify. So what I presented so far, I hope, is why we're interested in shops and kind of how we're going about it, what it is that we see in different types of shops that we can work with, the superpowers we can leverage. And what I'm going to share with you now is kind of what the big idea is that we're going to test in big supermarkets over the next year. And I'll explain it very, very simply, but then I just want to highlight 3 things which I think are interesting for lots of the people on this call to take from it. The big idea is that we're going to say to these big supermarkets, we've got a way, we can help you bring your underused spaces to life and make them inclusive, joyous, shared spaces, which zing with life and liveliness for the local community to gather. And so that sounds great, but the question is, brilliant, but how are you going to do it? And our big idea is to create familiar formats for the supermarket and for the staff to be able to really easily run. Like that one we've shown there of like a toy swap Tuesday, that kind of thing. So the big idea here is that by making the formats super simple, super familiar, and almost like in a box ready to go for staff to be able to do, and for BCO partners to be able to help with, that's the first thing. In fact, it's the second one down. And then the other thing is, which I think is really clever, is that the reason the spaces were being underused is they didn't have a kind of timetable or a rhythm to them. They were just these big spaces which look the same, 24 hours a day while the supermarket's open. And we were thinking, well, everything else in life has a weekly rhythm, your work, your school, a local swimming pool, everything by being chopped up and having events and timetable in it lets people know how to use it, what to expect, and gives it a rhythm. So we have this really interesting hypothesis, which is that by making events on top of a space, you can activate the space much more and make it much more inclusive. And the third thing we wanted to say is this is all about the human energy. Is that success depends not on these clever formats and ideas, although they are enabling factors. The real determinant will be whether we can unleash the natural energy of shop staff to want to do this. And that means that we have to activate their appetite in it, their interest in it, their confidence in it. And that's the thing which will give these ideas staying power and make them sustainable long after the grant period, and then make them spread nationwide. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. I'll put our email, Chomarang will put our email addresses in the chat if you'd like to contact us. And thank you. And it's been lovely to share all this with you. And I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you very much, Harry. That was really interesting. Thank you very much. So next, I'm going to hand over to Christine Owen. So Christine, would you come on and please introduce yourself and tell us your interest in what we're discussing today?
Hi, really nice to be invited along today. My name is Christine Owen. I'm an Associate Director with the Innovation Unit. I'm based in Edinburgh, and it's really lovely to see so many Scottish people and Scottish organisations in the chat. So special welcome to all of you from Scotland. The Innovation Unit is a not-for-profit UK-wide consultancy organisation, and our USB, if you like, is about scaling and bringing to life the big social impact innovations that we see that have an impact on inequalities, and scaling those and taking them into different places and community-led approaches. We have a range of portfolios or areas of impacts around justice, tackling health inequalities, mental health innovation, education, and place-based transformation. And in my previous role, I worked for the People Powered Results team and led their work in Scotland. We were part of Nesta, and we had a number of place-based methods that were bottom-up innovation methods that took us into cross-system big collaborations that really brought people together around a shared challenge or a shared goal to tackle complex, wicked system issues. And in Scotland, we do that in partnership with organisations like the Scottish Futures Trust or the hubs that work across Scotland. And it's really about taking a bottom-up, community-led approach to how we engage differently with our statutory partners. And as we've heard in the call already, it's that important hook in, that thing that really matters to local communities that often drives that shared goal and that shared challenge. And in a previous life, I originally trained as an occupational therapist, led lots of change and innovation around allied health practices, and worked in a national improvement role as well. So throughout my career, that I've had a real passion about how do you really understand what matters to people, what hooks them into stuff that you really want to see bigger shifts and change around. And as always with all of our innovation methods and our place-based transformation, really wrapping around a rapid learning approach to understand what's the contribution of that approach into local systems and how do we better understand how we connect into local communities and systems, because we're not the experts there, seeing all of those local expert places as being the experts in the issues that we're tackling. So I think we're going to come on and talk a bit more about that, but please do reach out if you want to hear more about it outside of the webinar as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. And last but by no means least, Mark, over to you, Mark. Introduce yourself and why you're with us today, your interest in bringing communities together.
Thank you very much, Nick. Nice to not be least. And I just think it's beautiful that the lottery is doing this and bringing 180 people together this afternoon. It's a really inspiring programme, I think, bringing people together, and we're really delighted to be part of that. We've only really just started on our initiative, and I'll go on just to say a little bit about that. We're a non-profit CIC, community interest company. We've got a base in London, in Hobson, but we've got colleagues working in Greater Manchester area, Middlesbrough, and I actually work out of Suffolk here in Bury St Edmunds. And we've been going for about 14 years, helping grassroots organisations through 14 years of austerity and the difficulties that presents up and down the country for the civil society sector is pretty profound. And we do that sort of work, supporting and capacity helping groups develop and be what they want to be and create the change that they want to create in their communities. And as a CIC, we also work to earn our living. I think it's quite important to say that as a CIC, and we get commissions from the sector to do evaluations, to do community engagement, lots of different work that we love doing all over the place. And that's really, really exciting. And I think we've been really concerned as an organisation, and this has been sincere, it's come out of the pandemic, but it's come out of, the societal changes that we see in front of us, where more and more people are isolated, more and more people are disconnected. The extent of loneliness, both for young and for older people, and for all sorts of communities, is really profound. And we've got quite involved in that work with the campaign to end loneliness, doing loneliness reduction training with colleagues up and down the country into some hotspots that get some funding to do more work in that. And I think out of that, the divisions that we see in our society, which we believe nefarious forces in the UK are stoking, quite frankly, and we're quite clear in saying that. And therefore, trying to bring communities together and connect people is something that we're passionate about. We've got a project called 32 Steps to Togetherness, and it's a great project, I think. It comes out of the work that, the work set out by John Yates in his book Fractured. He talked about all of these things that are going on in society, and he had some solutions. So we're focusing around those solutions. We've produced a manual of 32 steps based on what John was outlining, and we've given it some animation, we've given it some colour, I think, and we're bringing that forward over the next few months. And I'll put that in the chat, Nick. We've got the some events coming up actually starting next week. But it's really trying to encourage people individually and obviously collaboratively to take some actions, take some steps. And we're working primarily with social action, faith-inspired leaders. And our partners are Faith Forum for London, obviously based in London, and Edinburgh Interfaith Association, working in Edinburgh and the areas just around Edinburgh. And we're trying, although we haven't got much resource, to be frank, but we're trying to capture some hotspot work within England, and that's mainly in the northwest and the northeast and the east of England, and of course London. So we're doing some demonstration projects. We're trying to create networks of connections and people working together, online events. I'll put them in the chat in a minute, and also something. We're looking at doing 4 things this year in Peterborough, Rochdale, Barking, and in Edinburgh, so quite diverse places. An in-person thing, really around project exchange, so that people can learn and from each other and share experiences. And actually, and this is from our lived experience panel, we call them Togetherness Champions, but have some joy and some optimism of coming together and sharing that knowledge, because things are really, really tough in many of the communities that we're working in. So we've got to, in a sense, bring some life and bring some optimism and you know, just a forward trajectory that people can get involved in. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mark. So we're going to just have a general discussion. So I would encourage the panel to get inquisitive with each other, and you're the experts, not me. So my first question, and I'll start with you, Christine, if that's okay. And it's a nice starter for 10. But what strategies have you found effective in bringing people and communities together?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I would say it's something that we're always learning about, and there's never the right starting point, and you always look back and think, oh, it'd be good if we'd done that. So I think to give comfort in the fact that it's always a learning process. I've popped into the chat the Innovation Unit website, but also the People Powered Results Playbook, where we pulled together, I guess, the template drawing from our 100-day challenge approach, which is a place-based method to bring diverse collaborations together and really test out new ways of working and living, and really anchored in people-powered values, but also the conditions that you need to create to allow that work to flourish and to grow. And so that looks at new modes of leadership and that collective leadership group across a place that shifts power and isn't just about your typical forms of leadership and involves business and community leaders and all sorts. It's about active permission to move into different modes of leadership and to step in and out of those roles. How do you bring people together in new and different ways? And how do you mobilize diverse groups of people to see them as the experts in their local place? And how do you facilitate that well as if we talked about focusing on a shared challenge? We really believe in creating an environment for action and learning as part of those conditions. So again, using methodologies for change that's built into and will happen to understand different data and insights and stories that help bring that work to life, but also that real world testing and experimentation and celebrating success and learning from failure can be part of community-led innovation that shifts and nudges local places around a big shared wicked challenge into a different way of working and interacting with the statutory sector as well. So really dip into the toolkit as well, because it does give you some really practical examples or tools or approaches or methods to shift and try out and get creative about how you do that and to try and make it fun.
Thanks, Christine. I think today is going to be a winner for the most resources that we're going to share after the session as well. But that's great. We're a knowledge and learning team. We value these resources. We use them for our work as well. Mark, do you want to come in there as well about strategies that you found effective? I mean, we've heard from Christine for big systems change. We've heard from Harry about places and spaces. We've heard from Adam about food as the catalyst as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we come at it from the angle that everybody's unique and they're all very special people and they've got skills and attributes that they can bring to this. So I think our work is very kind of embedded in the sort of asset-based approach to that. And I think what's also important now in terms of our strategies and working with people, I say we're a bit hotspot. You know, it's like where people know us and trust us, and we're developing those relationships. I think we spend quite a lot of energy and time in talking to people, and in an old-fashioned sense, you know, talking to people on the telephone and getting people into a Zoom room from a varied sort of set of backgrounds, because that's what our project is about, you know, be it Christian and Muslim, or be it from deprived communities in the northeast, you know, with more affluent communities in London, etc. So I think we're trying to get a spirit of collaboration in the room by talking to people, and we do a lot of one-to-one as much as we can, and developing personal relationships. We see that as really important. And in terms of guiding the project we're doing here, but actually some other work that we do, we try and set up steering groups. I touched on our lived experience reference panel that we've set up with these togetherness champions, people from throughout the country that are working with us, and we offer them a small honorarium to come to some meetings. We value their time and their contribution, and they animate, I think, what we're doing as an organisation, and the work that we'd like to do is sort of rooted in their experience and rooted in their real urgent needs as well, because people have urgent needs working in civil society organisations that we can't, you know, we can't ignore. We're working with a lot of grassroots groups that have little resource. So how they get additional resource, or how they present themselves to the world and evidence their impact, is pretty important to them. So with this reference panel, we've got 3 people from Scotland, 6 people from England. That's quite an important tool of engagement and part of our strategy in terms of the work that we're doing on this bringing people together project.
Thanks, Mark. My next question, and this is for whoever wishes to go first, but when we canvassed the audience about what they'd be interested in, there was something around, you know, the practicalities of setting up projects for bringing people together. We heard Ellen earlier talking about travel issues, warm welcomes, and that sort of stuff. So what advice would you give to those looking to initiate community projects, however big or small, in their area? And go ahead, Adam. You on mute?
Yeah, it went a bit quiet, so I thought I would jump in. Sorry, remind me of the question. I've kind of had you're on mute as well now.
Yeah,
doing well.
It's about advice that you would give for organisations looking to initiate community projects, however big or small, bringing people together.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, we started by doing lots of visioning. So we tried to get the communities that we were working with, that we were talking to really try and imagine what the world would be like, you know, if once they'd made these changes. And that kind of created a little roadmap for them to get started. You know, they had a clear idea of what it was that they wanted to do, who they wanted to help, how they wanted to do it. And I think that was really, really helpful as a starting point before they launched straight into running activities and initiatives. And I think it is that power of networking as well. We were very clear that we were like, we don't know everything. We're quite well placed to know someone that might know how to help you. So we were very much just around the world's changing so quickly. I know this is a bit of a cliche, but no one's ever quite sure, is this new? Has it been done before? Has anyone ever done this? And 9 times out of 10, like, it has been done before, and people have found a solution to it. But often it's quite opaque. It's difficult to find those solutions and to speak to someone that has tried it and failed or succeeded or has something to offer and something to share. So yeah, bringing those community organisers together, sharing experiences and trying to iron out some of those wrinkles, you know, before they started was really, really useful. And yeah, and going back to that, having a vision, like a shared collaborative vision around the world that we want to see, and then using that as your kind of North Star to find your to find your way through the path was something that was helpful for us.
Thank you, Adam. Harry, did I see something about you've got a community of listeners? It was, sorry, Adam just sparked something then about asking, engaging with the community and stuff like that. And I think you've done work around a community of listeners.
Yeah, we have. Lots of our team are trained in ethnography. We do lots of deep listening as a kind of as one of the sort of first steps in all the work we do to make sure that we've kind of understood kind of what the needs are of the local area, but also what people's preferences are and what people want to have. So yeah, in this particular project, it's quite kind of infrastructural what we're doing, if you like, in that we are trying to switch on lots of latent kind of places and spaces, because we believe that by doing so, we will unlock and provide the opportunity for lots more social opportunity to spring up. So in a way, I guess what we're doing is almost kind of prior in some ways, or sort of upstream almost from what many of the other grantees are seeking to do. Yeah, definitely. I mean, all innovation is obviously based on, a hard-won insight of what's needed. I mean, we understand innovation to be the collision of what's needed with what's possible. So we're always kind of trying to explore those two things at once, and trying to open up and unlock possibilities, especially in this case with private sector owners of space who aren't basically sharing that space adequately with the community. Yeah.
Thanks, Harry. And you talk about sort of partnerships with shops and stuff like that. And Christine, I know that you mentioned about partnerships also. So I'm just wondering what role partnerships with local businesses, organisations, or government can play in this role of bringing communities together. How important are they? How do we foster those relationships?
It's a really good question, and all of our work is done and developed in partnerships and collaborations, partly because they give you a sight of stuff that you'll miss so that you won't see, and it broadens the reach of it. But also in the bottom-up approaches that we take, there are always layers and layers that we like to share learning with. And so we might always see some of our national partners and have them in a learning role about how they can unblock or enable what's going on locally, but also a range of views and perspectives, so that if we're trying to rapidly work with a community-led approach and want to shift things quickly, who in that system or around those systems can enable that change to happen and unblock it as well. And so then you are tapping into and shifting power quite naturally around the conditions you want to create around something that puts people at the heart of that and communities at the heart of that, to shift and move that forward, and also act as a learning opportunity as to what in that local place enabled that change to happen, and really pinpoint that. And some of that work can happen in a really small scale, like of the work that we led up in Shetland with small community development trusts, and trying to understand why that area and that local community development trust work very differently from another local area up the road, or how their interface with the statutory sectors are different. What are the skills, knowledge that enable that sort of approach to thrive and not in another community 8 miles up the road? And in some of the local areas, to the point about the questions that are being asked in the chat around bringing people together locally in something that structurally anchors them, moving towards a community development trust, or harnessing skills and knowledge that can help them look for funding or other things that anchors them in an approach, is also something that structurally changes, that allows us to nudge some of our smaller scale work to happen. Equally, the work that we lead across Greater Manchester, what are we learning about those big system leadership shifts that need to happen, and how do we understand at a really small community level what's required versus the big system shifts that enable those community development or community-led approaches to happen in different places.
And Mark, could I just come to you? Because if we want to make sure all communities are involved in these discussions and bringing all communities together. A big part of our new strategy at the Community Fund is around EDI. So how do we make sure that people from diverse communities have equal access? How are they involved? How are we bringing them together?
Quite big questions there, Nick. Yeah, I mean, I think that our approach, and to answer your question, is you reach out, you contact people, you speak to them, you call them on the phone, and you develop those partnerships, and that's what we're doing right now. You know, probably an example is the event we've got planned in Peterborough. We've got the Muslim Council of Britain involved. We've got the East Timorese Community Association, which is a small migrant organisation, involved. We've got the Peterborough refugee community involved in organising, being part of shaping that, and having some sort of equal power on that. But I think that what we try and do is reach out and work. Obviously, we work with CVSs, you know, in Peterborough and in Hackney at the moment, or Action Together in Rochdale. So we try and generate those partnerships, and we kind of recognise that there are gaps, and that we you know, we seek to get those people involved. We had a meeting last night. Sorry, it's a thing about timing as well, isn't it? We had a meeting at 7 o'clock last night about the refugee situation in Suffolk. We had Suffolk Refugee Support presenting, you know, the situation here in Suffolk. We had Runnymede Trust, which is a bit of a London-based organisation. Sometimes they want to be a bit more involved in national work. So we got them along to the meeting. Somebody else came from Oldham, and we're saying, God, we're having these conversations in a way that was really quite empathetic to their needs, and that they could feel that they were in that safe shared space. So we try and do a lot of that. The other practical thing, just using Peterborough as an example, how do you actually get, you know, social action leaders or people doing some good stuff to Peterborough, you know, from Redcar or from whatever? It's, you know, it's expensive. So we've got some money in our budget to pay for a minibus. I think we've got, you know, 18 people coming from the Greater Manchester area coming to it, you know, and train fare. So we are making some provision for that, because otherwise it just can't be there. You know, they're giving their time, that's free, and that's a big resource, isn't it? But they can't afford the trains. I mean, God, the trains are so expensive, as you know. So yeah, we try and do something quite practical, as well as kind of the reaching out, making sure people feel really welcome, that they're valued, and that, you know, they're actually gonna, when they arrive, they're gonna get a smile, and, you know, people are going to engage with them. Yeah. That's what we try and do.
Thank you. I can't believe where the time's gone, and we must finish on time. So I'm just going to give the panel an opportunity just to talk about the things they have planned, what's coming up, what are you excited about, what should we keep an eye on? And I'm going to ask you if you could keep it to about 30 seconds. And I'm going to start with you, Harry, your top left of my screen.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think for us, it's all about social infrastructure in the everyday flow. So that's what we're interested in, is how you can switch social infrastructure on that's already in the everyday flow of people's lives. And we're increasingly working with government and DLUP on that, which is amazing, thanks to this project. Yeah, so watch this space for kickstarting social infrastructure and more thinking on that.
Thank you, Harry. You're more than welcome. Adam, you're next on my screen.
Thank you. We are doing some local versions with local authorities of our My Food Community Food Leadership programme, making sure that community voices are represented across local food partnerships. So yeah, excited about that.
Thank you, Adam. Next on my screen, Mark, what are you excited about over the next couple of months?
I'm always excited, always excited. I'm really excited if these 148, we've had a drop off, Nick, but 148 people look at the manual and look at the steps, see if they want to get involved with what we're doing and partner with us, come to our online events that we're starting, and come to the in-person events that we're looking to do in Peterborough, Rochdale, Barking and Edinburgh.
Thank you, Mark. And over to you, Christine. What's coming up for you?
We're really excited about how we really connect some of our large scale and smaller scale place-based transformation work across the UK. So have a look out for that around Greater Manchester and places in Scotland. Some of our bigger collaborations with some of our national partners of what that looks like and how we're going to share the learning out there. But some big programs of change around children, families and mental health that will take those place-based approaches. And like Mark said, dip into the resources. The people-powered results stuff is open source, gives you some really practical ideas about how do you shift power, how do you really meaningfully involve people in your work. And do reach out and get in touch with us if you want to ask more.
Brilliant, thank you. And that was perfect from everybody time-wise. Thank you very much. So just can I say some thank yous. Thank you to Ellen and all of our panel members today for a really interesting session. Sorry we didn't have more time. I think we definitely could have kept going, couldn't we? Thanks to Elvid too, who's just going to pop a quick poll into the chat, which will just pop up on your screen just to get a quick barometer of the session, and you will be getting more in-depth evaluations soon as well. This is the first in a run of 4 events, so we still have 3 sessions left, which Elvid will post more information about in the chat as well. So if you want to know more about engaging people with climate action, building healthy neighbourhoods, youth volunteering, please sign up to our upcoming sessions. And finally, thank you to you all for coming along today, and hope to see you at future events. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.